Ladies and gentlemen, in a world that constantly glorifies noise, connection, and constant communication, solitude is often misunderstood. People think being alone means being lonely, but in reality, solitude is one of the most powerful tools a human being can possess. Being alone is powerful because it is in solitude that you meet the most important person in your life. When the distractions fade away, when the voices of others quiet down, and when the world stops demanding your attention, you finally hear the sound of your own soul. That is where true clarity is born. When you are alone, you are not influenced by the expectations, judgments, or opinions of others. You can ask yourself, what do I truly want? What do I value? Who am I, really? These answers don't come when you are lost in the crowd. They come in silence, when it is just you and your thoughts. Being alone builds strength. Think about it. Many fear solitude because they cannot sit with themselves. But when you learn to enjoy your own company, you unlock independence. You no longer rely on others to validate your worth or fill your emptiness. You discover that your happiness was never meant to be outsourced. It was always within you. Alone, time also sparks creativity. History shows us that some of the greatest inventions, philosophies, and works of art were born from moments of solitude. Because when you are alone, your imagination is free to wander without interruption, and your mind connects ideas in ways it never could in chaos. And perhaps the most powerful part of being alone is this: it prepares you for relationships and the world. When you know yourself deeply, when you are whole on your own, you don't enter relationships out of need. You enter out of choice. You don't cling to people. You connect with them from a place of strength. So, I want to remind you, being alone is not a weakness. It is a superpower. It's in those quiet moments with yourself that you build resilience, self-awareness, and unshakable confidence. The strongest people are not those who are surrounded by crowds, but those who can stand in silence, comfortable in their own skin, and say, I am enough. We live in a world that is louder than ever before. Every moment is filled with the buzz of notifications, conversations, responsibilities, and distractions. People are constantly connected to others through social media, phones, workplaces, or social circles. Yet, amidst all this noise, there is one connection that many people neglect, the connection with themselves, and this is where the power of solitude comes in. Solitude is not about loneliness, it is about alignment. It is in solitude that you finally meet the most important person in your life, you. When you spend time alone, you strip away the external influences that often shape your behavior, your thoughts, and even your desires. You stop trying to live up to the expectations of society, family, or friends, and you start asking yourself deeper questions. Who am I? What do I truly want in life? What brings me peace? What drains me? These are questions that cannot be answered in the chaos of the world. They are answered in the quiet moments, when you are alone with your thoughts, when no one else is watching, and when there is no need to pretend. The connection with yourself through solitude is powerful because it teaches you authenticity. Most people live their lives wearing masks, acting one way with family, another way with friends, and yet another in the workplace. But when you are alone, there is no mask, no performance, and no audience. You begin to understand your true self, not the self you show to others. This is the foundation of self-awareness, and self-awareness is the key to every form of personal growth. Think about this. Every strong decision you have ever made in life, whether it was choosing a career path, leaving behind something toxic, or pursuing a dream, did not come from the crowd's opinion. It came from those quiet moments when you listened to yourself. Solitude gives you that sacred space to reflect and to hear the whispers of your intuition. Many people run away from being alone because they are afraid of what they might find within. But the truth is, if you do not know yourself, how can you know what you truly want from life? Being connected to yourself through solitude also builds inner peace. The world constantly pushes us to chase validation, to prove ourselves, and to keep up with others. But when you are alone, you learn to be content without applause. You learn to sit in silence and still feel whole. That is a power that no one can take from you. Moreover, solitude helps you realign with your values. Every day, you are bombarded with messages telling you what success should look like, what beauty should mean, and how happiness should be defined, but these definitions are often borrowed. Solitude gives you the chance to ask, what does success mean to me? What makes me truly happy? By answering these questions, you stop living someone else's life and begin living your own. Finally, solitude is not just about isolation, it is about preparation. When you are deeply connected to yourself, you walk into the world with clarity, strength, and direction. You are no longer easily swayed by peer pressure, societal trends, or the opinions of others. You live authentically because you know who you are, and when you are anchored in yourself, you become unstoppable. So remember this: solitude is not emptiness. Solitude is the space where your soul breathes, where your mind clears, and where your heart speaks. It is in that silence that you meet yourself, and once you truly know yourself, you will never feel lonely again. Because the strongest connection you can ever have is not with the world, but with the person staring back at you in the mirror. One of the greatest powers that solitude gives us is the ability to stand on our own. When you learn to enjoy your own company, when you no longer fear being alone, you discover something extraordinary: independence. And with independence comes an inner strength that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. Most people rely heavily on others for their sense of identity, happiness, or security. They need constant validation, constant approval, and constant company just to feel okay about themselves. But here's the truth: when your worth is tied to others, your life becomes unstable. Because people can leave, circumstances can change, opinions can shift. If your sense of value depends on someone else, then you are giving them power over your peace. Solitude teaches you to take that power back. It teaches you to sit with yourself, to be your own friend, and to find joy in your own presence. At first, it can feel uncomfortable. Many people avoid solitude because it forces them to confront their thoughts, their wounds, and their fears. But that discomfort is where growth begins. Once you push past it, you begin to realize that you don't need anyone else to complete you. You were already whole. Independence is not about rejecting people. It's not about saying, I don't need anyone at all. No, independence is about saying, I am enough on my own, and anything others bring into my life is an addition, not a requirement. That shift in mindset changes everything. Because when you are no longer desperate for approval or companionship, you interact with others from a place of strength, not need. You no longer cling to people out of fear of being alone. You connect with them out of genuine choice. Think about the strongest people you know, the leaders, the visionaries, the ones who inspire others. Their strength does not come from needing people to hold them up. It comes from their ability to stand tall on their own. They are not afraid of solitude. In fact, they use solitude to recharge, to reflect, and to sharpen themselves. That's why when storms come, they are not easily shaken. Their roots are deep because they grew them in silence. Solitude also teaches resilience. When you face challenges in life, you quickly learn that not everyone will always be there for you. Friends can disappoint you. Family may not understand you, and even the closest people can fail to support you the way you need. But when you are comfortable with solitude, you know that even if the world turns its back, you still have yourself to rely on. And that is one of the greatest strengths a person can ever have, the ability to stand firm even when standing alone. This independence also fuels confidence. When you realize you can handle life on your own, your self-esteem grows. You stop doubting your worth and start trusting your abilities. You no longer make decisions out of fear of rejection or judgment because you know your peace does not depend on anyone else's approval. That kind of confidence is magnetic. It makes others respect you even more. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more independent you become, the stronger your relationships get. Why? Because you are no longer in them out of fear, need, or desperation. You are in them because you choose to be. That creates healthier, more balanced connections. You don't burden others with the responsibility of making you happy. You come into relationships already whole, and that wholeness strengthens every bond. So, independence and inner strength are not built by surrounding yourself with people all the time. They are built in solitude, when you prove to yourself that you can stand alone. When you reach that place, you are no longer controlled by fear, by need, or by loneliness. You walk through life knowing that no matter what happens, you are enough. And that kind of strength is unbreakable. One of the greatest gifts solitude offers is clarity, the ability to see yourself, your life, and your path with sharper vision. In a world overflowing with noise, opinions, and distractions, most people live on autopilot. They rush through life, influenced by what society tells them to want, by what friends expect them to do, or by what family believes is right for them. But here's the truth. You cannot truly discover who you are if you are always surrounded by the voices of others. Real clarity comes in solitude, real self-discovery begins when the noise fades and you are left alone with your thoughts. Clarity is not simply about making decisions, it's about understanding who you are at the deepest level. When you spend time alone, you create space to reflect, space to question whether the path you're walking is truly yours, or just a borrowed version of someone else's dream. Without solitude, it's easy to fall into the trap of living a life that looks good on the outside but feels empty on the inside. Solitude gives you the courage to ask, am I living my truth, or am I just living to be accepted? Self-discovery begins with these hard questions. It is in solitude that you can look honestly at yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your fears, and your passions. Often, people avoid being alone because it forces them to face uncomfortable truths. But running away from yourself only delays your growth. Facing yourself, even when it's difficult, is the only way to build a life of authenticity and meaning. Think of it this way. If your mind is like water, the constant noise and demands of life keep it stirred up, cloudy, and restless. But when you step into solitude, the water settles. Slowly, it becomes clear. Suddenly, you can see to the bottom. You can see what has always been there, waiting to be noticed. That is what clarity feels like. And once you experience it, you realize how much of life you've been living in distraction rather than direction. Clarity also helps you make better decisions. When you are always surrounded by others, their opinions inevitably influence your choices. But when you are alone, you begin to separate your own desires from the expectations of others. You gain the strength to say no to what doesn't align with your truth and yes to what truly resonates with your heart. That kind of decision-making leads to a life of fulfillment, not regret. Another beautiful part of self-discovery in solitude is uncovering hidden passions and talents. Many people don't know what they truly love because they never give themselves the quiet space to explore. When you are alone, your creativity awakens. You may find joy in writing, painting, problem solving, or simply thinking deeply. The world is full of distractions that keep you from hearing these inner callings, but solitude allows them to surface. And here's the most powerful truth: self-discovery through solitude builds direction. Once you know who you are and what matters to you, you stop drifting. You stop chasing what doesn't belong to you. You move with purpose, and when you move with purpose, every step you take is stronger, more confident, and more meaningful. So, clarity and self-discovery are not luxuries, they are necessities. Without them, life becomes a blur of obligations and borrowed dreams. But with them, life becomes a journey of authenticity and strength. And the key to unlocking both is solitude. Remember this: the time you spend alone is not wasted. It is an investment in the most important relationship you will ever have, the relationship with yourself. And when you know yourself deeply, when you've discovered your true values, passions, and direction, you no longer walk blindly through life. You walk with vision, and vision is power. One of the most underestimated benefits of solitude is the way it fuels creativity and innovation. History has shown us again and again that some of the greatest ideas, inventions, and works of art were born in silence, in solitude, in those moments when a person stepped away from the noise of the world and allowed their mind to wander freely. Creativity doesn't thrive in chaos, it thrives in quiet. When you are constantly surrounded by people, conversations, and responsibilities, your mind is occupied with external demands. You are reacting more than creating. But when you step into solitude, your brain has the space it needs to connect ideas, imagine possibilities, and generate solutions that you would never have considered in the rush of daily life. Solitude allows your inner world to come alive. Think of some of the greatest innovators and creators in history: Albert Einstein, Nikola Tesla, Leonardo da Vinci, Maya Angelou. They all valued solitude deeply because they understood that silence sharpens the mind. Einstein once said, "The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind." Why? Because when there is no noise, your mind is free to explore new patterns, new combinations, and new connections. Creativity is not about busyness, it is about spaciousness. When you are alone, your imagination stretches. You are no longer confined by the opinions, judgments, or limitations of others. You can experiment with new ideas without fear of being criticized. You can brainstorm freely, dream boldly, and create without hesitation. This freedom is essential for innovation because every new idea is fragile at first. It needs a quiet space to grow before it is ready to face the world. Another reason solitude fuels creativity is that it forces you to listen to your inner voice. The world is full of influences: what's trending, what's popular, what everyone else is doing. But real innovation rarely comes from following the crowd. It comes from listening to your unique perspective, your personal experiences, and your inner instincts. Solitude helps you tune into that voice, and when you do, you unlock originality, the kind of originality that changes the world. Creativity also thrives in solitude because the mind naturally enters a state of deep focus when it's not being interrupted. Psychologists call this flow state, a condition where you are fully absorbed in what you're doing and ideas seem to pour out effortlessly. It's hard to enter this state when you're constantly distracted, but in solitude, you can reach it with ease. That's why writers, artists, musicians, and inventors often seek out quiet spaces to do their best work. But creativity in solitude isn't just about producing art or inventions. It's also about problem solving. Many of life's challenges require innovative solutions, and those solutions often come in the stillness of being alone. How many times have you had your best ideas while walking alone, showering, or simply sitting in silence? That's no accident. When the noise quiets, your subconscious mind begins to work more effectively, offering insights that were hidden beneath the surface. Most importantly, solitude teaches you to enjoy the process of creation itself. In a world obsessed with outcomes, likes, followers, recognition, and results, it's easy to forget that the joy of creativity is in the doing. When you are alone, there is no pressure to perform for others. You create simply because it fulfills you, because it feels right, because it brings you alive. That kind of creativity is pure, authentic, and powerful. So if you want to unlock your fullest creative potential, don't be afraid of silence. Don't run from solitude, embrace it. Use it as a sanctuary where your imagination can expand, where ideas can be born, and where your mind can innovate without limits. Remember, the world's greatest breakthroughs were not shouted into existence in the middle of noise. They were whispered into being in the quiet corners of solitude. One of the most powerful lessons solitude teaches us is that we must first be whole on our own before we can build strong, meaningful relationships with others. Too often, people enter relationships out of emptiness, hoping that someone else will fill the void within them, fix their insecurities, or make them feel complete. But here's the truth. If you don't already feel whole when you are alone, no relationship in the world will be able to fill that gap. Wholeness begins with you. When you spend time in solitude, you learn to enjoy your own company. You discover that your happiness, peace, and sense of worth do not depend on someone else's presence or approval. This is powerful because it means you are not entering relationships out of desperation. You are entering them out of choice. You don't cling to people because you fear being alone. Instead, you connect with them because they add value to your already fulfilled life. That difference changes everything. Think about it. When two incomplete people come together, the relationship becomes a place of dependency. Each person is looking to the other to provide what they cannot give themselves: validation, happiness, or confidence. This creates imbalance, pressure, and eventually disappointment. But when two whole individuals come together, the relationship becomes a partnership, not a lifeline. Each person brings strength, clarity, and self-respect to the table. Instead of draining each other, they elevate each other. Solitude is where this wholeness is built. It is where you learn to sit with your own thoughts, face your insecurities, and heal your wounds. Many people run from solitude because they don't want to confront their pain, but avoiding yourself only pushes that pain into your relationships. The more you know yourself and heal in solitude, the healthier and stronger your relationships will be. Wholeness also means you stop expecting others to make you happy. Happiness is an inside job. No partner, no friend, no family member can carry that responsibility for you. When you learn to create your own joy in solitude, you take that pressure off your relationships. Instead of asking, "What can you give me to make me feel whole?" you ask, "What can we build together since I am already whole?" That is the mindset of strong, lasting connections. Another beautiful truth is that solitude gives you the clarity to recognize what you truly want in a partner. When you are comfortable being alone, you don't settle. You don't choose someone out of fear of loneliness. You choose someone because they align with your values, your vision, and your heart. And that leads to deeper, more authentic relationships. Wholeness before relationships also protects you from toxic bonds. When you are whole, you don't tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or unhealthy dependence. You know your worth, and you walk away from anything that doesn't honor it. This strength comes from solitude, from learning that you can stand alone and still feel fulfilled. Once you realize that being alone is better than being in a relationship that breaks you, you begin to attract connections that truly nourish you. And here's the most powerful part. When you are whole on your own, your love becomes more powerful, because it is no longer love out of need. It is love out of abundance. You are not giving someone scraps of attention because you're drained. You are giving them the overflow of your fullness. That kind of love is pure, uplifting, and transformative. So remember this: solitude is not a punishment, it is preparation. It is where you learn to become whole, so that when you step into relationships, you are not looking for someone to complete you. You are looking for someone to share your completeness with. And that is the foundation of love that lasts. Ladies and gentlemen, we began this journey by exploring solitude, a concept that many fear but few truly understand. And what we have discovered is that being alone is not a weakness. It is one of the greatest strengths a human being can possess. Through solitude, we connect with ourselves on the deepest level, discovering who we truly are beyond the masks and expectations of the world. In solitude, we build independence and inner strength, learning that our worth is not tied to others but rooted firmly within us. In solitude, we find clarity and self-discovery, finally seeing the difference between what society tells us to want and what our souls truly crave. In solitude, creativity and innovation flourish, because silence gives birth to ideas that noise can never nurture. And ultimately, solitude prepares us for love and connection, because only when we are whole on our own can we form relationships that are healthy, balanced, and lasting. The truth is this: solitude is not loneliness. Loneliness is emptiness, but solitude is fullness. Loneliness is looking outward and finding no one. Solitude is looking inward and finding yourself. And when you find yourself, you discover a strength, a clarity, and a peace that no one can take away. So the next time you find yourself alone, do not fear it. Do not run from it. Embrace it. because it is in those quiet moments when the world grows still that you meet your truest self. And once you have built that connection, you will never again depend on the world to define you. You will walk through life with confidence, with creativity, with purpose, and with love that flows from abundance, not need. Being alone is not the absence of power, it is the birthplace of it. And when you master solitude, you discover that you are never truly alone. You have yourself, and that is enough. Thank you.